All right. Welcome to Semper Sometimes with Benny. So this is a long awaited episode. D.Cure just said that right before I clicked record, so I got to say it again because it's been like we did an episode about a little over a month ago, right when Let's Go Brandon came out, right around that area with Topher, the Marine rapper, and yourself. And one thing that I've been trying to do, and I'm glad that we're able to be here right now, is just get you'll be the first person that I do this with, so that's the best part. Is really what I'm trying to do is try to understand Decuir, try to understand who the artist is, because you're more than that. You know what I mean? You're a father, you're a husband, you're a son. I'm sure you got siblings.
Yep, 3 brothers.
So you're a brother. So you're a brother. So a lot of people they hear the music, but they don't know the person behind the music. And that's something that I've always wanted to do growing up. I correlated with a lot of people, but I never knew their stories. And that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, was because like listening to Enemy, bro, I feel like you were literally talking about my life through that whole entire album. Like I felt like that album was literally like a lot of the same stuff that I went through. So before we get into all of that, welcome to my show, man. I appreciate you coming on. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. This, like you said, is long awaited. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for always supporting me and supporting the group. And we're grateful for you. So yeah, glad to dive in.
No doubt, man. So I guess the first thing would be just kind of starting out with who is Andrew? Like who is Decuir? Where did you come from? How did you come up? Like if anybody was to ask that question, like, hey, who is Andrew? What would the answer be?
Yeah, so I grew up in the church with, I had both parents. They were both in the Army. They're actually in the Army band, and that's how they met. So music was always a big part of my life, and they played, in the church growing up, and, we watched them kind of lead in worship and all that stuff. And so that was a big part of my life as well. And grew up with 3 brothers in Southern Arizona, and it was a small town. And kind of once, I grew up and figured, what am I going to do when I turned 18? It was kind of like, well, I'm patriotic, so I'm going to go join the Air Force. And so I did that for 11 years. And then when it was kind of time for me to get out, I was like, well, I've always loved hip hop music, and it was always a big part of my, music in general was always a big part of my life. But as I got into like middle school and high school, hip hop became the big influencer, the thing that kind of motivated me. So that was the thing, I started early on. But serving in the military is hard to kind of pursue a career or a passion for music. So once I got out, it was like, okay, now's the time to take kind of what I've learned and all the rough moments in my life and kind of share about those experiences. I kind of felt like God gave me a very tough and difficult path so that I had a story to tell and to share with people. And so that was kind of my go-to, is to share about, my drinking and my depression and all the hardships that I faced. And here we are. I'm here, sharing those things and hoping it helps people. So
and it will, man, it will, because in the episodes that I've done before this, one of my very first episodes was in my garage, and it was with my buddy Matt, and he talked about his addiction, his battle with alcoholism and addiction and drugs and all that stuff. And it was one of the very first episodes I did, and I got so many people that reached out to me like, bro, Matt's story helped change my life. Matt's story made me realize I didn't have a problem. And even myself, like listening to Matt's story, like it made me start looking at myself like, do I have an issue with substance abuse? Like it was something that like I've always said I don't. But then listening to his story and listening to my boy Matt talk about how, I asked him one of the questions I asked him in the interview was, hey man, could you take one drink right now? And he was like, no. He was like, bro, if I take one drink, he's like, I'm gonna become a ball of fire and I'm gonna light this whole town up. And he was like, he's like, I can't. He's like, I can never go back. He's like, and because he has relapsed, and there's been times where he has, and then it's gotten even worse. So he's like, I've realized that I can't just have one sip. So before we get into the alcoholism and the depression and stuff like that, man, one of my questions is, what drew you towards the Air Force? Like, was there a specific reason why you chose the Air Force over other branches? What was it that kind of geared you towards the Air Force?
Honestly, I was gonna go join the Marines, and my dad was like, "You probably should rethink that." And he said, you know, how well the Air Force was treated and how their facilities were always nicer. And, you know, he said, I think you should think about joining the Air Force. Because when he was in the Army, he was staying, you know, he would go to an Air Force base and he would see how nice it was. He's like, man, maybe I shouldn't have joined the Army. And so I kind of was talked out of it by my dad, and it all worked out, you know? Yeah.
So what did you do in the Air Force?
I was like an MP, military police. So
okay.
they call it security forces in the Air Force, but mostly law enforcement and security. So
got you. Okay. So
holding
one of
it
the
down.
other things I wanted, so you said that you grew up in the church, your family was in the church, and you know, you ended up, you know, having issues with alcoholism, and I know that in some of your music you talk about divorce, you talk about cheating, you talk about a lot of different things that you've battled with. Was there a time that you kind of like, I guess, stepped away from the church and just kind of backslid? Like, is that kind of what happened? Like, what was going on in life? Like, what? And another thing too is that while you were going through your high school stage, I know hip hop was there, and 9 times out of 10, hip hop really isn't working alongside the Christians. So I feel like, was there a lot of like, you know, issues with what you were listening to and portraying, and like kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess for me, it was kind of like one of those things that I felt I was somewhat sheltered as a kid, you know, that I wanted to see, you know, these things that I needed to be saved from. That's kind of one of those phrases, you know, that comes back to me. Because you're like, you need to be saved. You need to be saved. And I'm like, why? Like, from what? Yeah. So I think that was just a part of my journey, was needing to experience, you know, and see kind of what else was out there, you know, why I needed to be saved, like really get out into the world. Because, you know, like I said, I grew up in a small town and there wasn't much access to anything. Even hip hop itself was like, there was not an existence of the culture where I grew up. And so I wanted to, that was part of, you know, another reason to join the Air Force, to kind of get out to the world and see, you know, and experience different cultures and kind of, you know, see what was out there. And so I think I learned pretty quickly that there was a lot of bad out there. And so, you know, I kind of got lost, slowly kind of stepped away from faith. You know, it's not something that I just decided, you know, I was going to like, oh, I'm not going to church this week or whatever. You know, I kind of just slowly hung out with the crowd that drank. You know, that started in high school. You know, I kind of just wanted to be cool. You know, you want to be accepted. I think anyone does. You know, you want people to accept you for who you are, and sometimes you lose a bit of yourself while trying to get accepted. And so, yeah, I think probably when I was, man, there were times in high school where I would drink before school, like before I got on the bus, man. And even looking back, like it started early, early on.
Bro, so talking about that, man. So I don't think I've shared this on the podcast. So I guess this is the time to share it, because it just came up and might not ever come up again. Yeah. So I remember, so one of my boys, one of my close friends, his name's Jesus. I was a freshman in high school, and he had just gotten his girlfriend pregnant, and he's older than me, like 2-3 years older than me. And Jesus comes to me one day, and he's like, yo, could me and my girl stay at your crib? I was like, yeah, because I lived in the basement of a house in Brooklyn. So like we had the whole entire house. It was a 3-floor house, but I had the whole basement, and my parents literally didn't care what I did, how I did it. I had my own entrance. Like literally my family would never know. So I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, bro. I was like, just don't leave the house until I tell you to leave the house. And don't come in the house until I tell you. I got to make sure the coast is clear. So my father, to this day, still does not know that my boy lived with us for like 3 or 4 months. Like, has
Yeah.
no idea. And so my boy, ended up hanging out with us, and his son is now like, I think like 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah.
And so my boy, after a couple of months, he got himself on his feet, was able to, get a crib, get a place to stay and everything. And he says to me, he's like, remember, I'm like 14, 15 years old, if that. And he's like, hey, man, he's like, what do you want me to do for you, bro? Like, I owe you. And I'm like, at this time, he had already saved my life. Like, that's another story for another time. But he had literally saved my life from getting stabbed. And I was like, bro, I already owe you. Like, there's no reason for me to, like, this is my debt to you from that. And
Yeah.
he's like, no. What do you want me to do? And I was like, all right, bro. I was like, you know what? I was like, get me a 6-pack of Sparks. And Sparks was this energy drink alcohol. And the thing is that this is 5:30 in the morning on our way to school.
Yeah.
And I was on my way to ROTC. So my boy Jesus is like, he can get it. No one would ever card him. Like, he's a big gorilla dude, like Puerto Rican cat. Like, no one would ever card him because he looks like he's 40.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right. He's like, yeah, bro, I got you. I'll go get it. And the other thing too was it was an energy drink. So if you didn't know it was an alcoholic beverage, you wouldn't even know. So the delis half the time didn't even realize it was alcoholic. So they would just sell it to you. So he buys it, he gets it, and it's like the same size as this, but I remember it was orange and silver on the bottom, and it had half alcohol, half energy drink. How this was ever a thing, I don't understand.
This was like pre Four Locos, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pre Four Locos, bro. And so he buys it, and I remember I drank like 2 of them, and he's like, yo, he called me, my name's Doug, right?
Yeah.
He called me Doug Bennett. He called me Thugby. I don't know where, I don't know why. He'd be like, yo, Thug. He'd be like, yo, Thug.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yo, Thug. I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, yo, you should let me pierce your ear right now, bro. I was like, okay. So this dude literally just takes like earrings out of his pocket. I don't know where they came from. And he just pops it through my ear. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, duh. So then we start walking to the school. We get to the school, and I had ROTC. So I get in formation, and we start doing accountability, and I'm bombed. I'm drunk out of my mind. It's like 7 a.m. And the ROTC instructor, his name was Sergeant Poirier, he starts talking to me, and I'm like, good morning, sir. Like, literally fumbling through my words. This dude's like,
yeah,
Bennett, are you drunk? He's like, Bennett, are you drunk? I was like, no, sir. No. Why? So I'm literally bombed. He knew. So then we go in formation, and now we're walking around the football field, around the track. I'm like this, like bombed. Then we finished ROTC, and this chick, I don't remember her name, but this chick comes up to me, and she's like, yo, Doug. I'm like, what's up? She's like, yo, who pierced your ear? Because that shit is not even. I was like, oh, my boy Jesus. She was like, yo, let me take it out and fix it. So she pulls it out of my ear and re-pierces it in another hole. Like, so now at this point, like, my ears been pierced like 3 or 4 times. Like, yeah. Bro. And then when I got home, my dad made me pull them out of my ears. But like, yo, I just remember like that was the spiral effect. And like you were saying, like at the time I grew up in the church too. Like I remember being like pre-K, like I remember like being 4 or 5 years old, like always in the church my whole entire life. And the same thing, I wondered the same thing. It's like, what am I being saved from? And you know, I wasn't as sheltered as others, but I was, you know, my parents definitely tried to guard me from some stuff. But I definitely can relate to that, because that's the thing about alcoholism is it gets, you know, and sin really is that it gets at you at such a young age, and then it slowly begins to eat at you until you realize it's too late. And then at that point, it's like, bro, what do I do now?
It grows and grows.
Yeah. So now for you, so how was did you experience a lot of alcoholism in the Air Force? Like, was that kind of where it kicked off? Like, when did you, I don't want to say realized it, but when did you start really experiencing, you know, your issues with alcoholism?
Yeah. So I was stationed in England when I was 19 years old, and the drinking age is 18 over there. So that was probably the catalyst for my alcoholic days. And I got a DUI actually pretty early on. I was probably only 20 years old when I got my first DUI. Um, and yeah, that was definitely like, even then I still would like reason with myself, like, oh, well, it was just a mistake, like I don't have a problem, and you get into these habits where you convince yourself, that you could do better this time. And I did that for years, so let's see. Yeah. My first DUI at 20, and I kept drinking until I was 29 years old. And so there was a lot of messy times, a lot of waking up, just not remembering, a lot of blackouts, a lot of broken relationships. I was also married at the time. So I think part of the reason that I had that DUI was that my first wife had just left. Like, we were in England, and I was deployed at the time, and she went back home to the States. And once I got back, obviously I couldn't drink over there, but once I got back, I kind of let loose. And it was something I never talked about really, but I was getting divorced, and I was still a kid really. and that was just my way to cope, was to drink and to kind of just numb all the feelings and the emotions, that guys aren't supposed to have. You're a tough guy in the military, like. And so yeah, that was kind of just my way to deal with it and cope, and feel something else other than sadness, try to liven it up a bit and have a good time and drink. And really did that for years, man. I mean, just found different crowds, because I mean, even the worst that I got, I would have to find new people to hang out with, because people didn't want to be around me. It was like I was probably really depressing to be around. Once people really got to kind of know how I truly felt deep down, once the alcohol wore off and people were around me. So yeah, as it grew and grew, and I went from England to Little Rock, Arkansas, and it got real bad there. I actually was pulled over, but I was pulled over drunk one night, and they let me go to my supervisor, but it was really weird, because I was pulled over, and I don't know if it was like a new officer that didn't know what to do, but he literally let me go. And then I kept driving, and then I was pulled over again, like 2 minutes down the road. And so I was like, well, this is really weird. And I was like drunk, and they basically just said, call your boss and have him come get you. And they let me go. But I was like, at that point, I was like, man, I could get away with this stuff. And so that like was really bad for me. While at the moment I was like, man, I can't believe I got away with that. It was terrible, because like I can drink and drive now, like I felt kind of invincible.
Yeah.
And man, it got worse.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. And I've kind of gotten into this conversation before, but that's the thing when people are like, oh, you're such a blue falcon, or hey, you should let that guy go. And it's like, that's the problem, is that when you do those things, well, now this guy has this, in his head that I'm invincible, I can do this, nobody's gonna get me, no one's gonna get me. And then it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. And then it becomes 1 time, 2 time, 3 times, and then it becomes a problem. Yep. And that's why, again, it's like, the reality of it is that we say it's a hard place to be put in, but the reality of it is we should do the right thing when it happens. Because that's the thing, is like, oh, you're hooking your boy up, or even if it's not your boy, like that guy had no idea who you were. He had no idea. He didn't have to do that. But now his reaction has an opposite reaction. Like,
right.
It's all crazy, because it's like, okay, he thought he was helping you out. He didn't want to get you in trouble, but he never would know what was going on in your head. And that would lead you to more alcoholism and down a deep, darker path. So my next question is that as all this was going on, was anybody in your like command, or any of your friends, were any of them like noticing what was going on with you, or did they just not, like, were you at least like, were you like what do you call it? Like a functioning alcoholic? Like you'd be at work, do your job, do everything. And then as soon as you left, you were like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I was, probably a really good, troop, or whatever they would say. They knew, I think deep down, they knew that I was a good person. And so I think they would maybe let things slide, when it came to my job performance. I would always work hard, and I would always, do what I would need to do and then some. And so that kind of like saved me, when it came to like me getting into these incidents off duty, was like, oh, well, Decuir's a good guy. Like, we're not going to screw him over. So yeah, I had an Article 15 and I stayed in when people, would get one and get kicked out. And so I think them knowing, kind of who I was helped me out a lot and saved me, when in reality, it probably shouldn't have mattered, so that I could have learned earlier on. Um, because so I did England, I was in Arkansas for 5 years. I ended up getting married again during that time. Went on a deployment and met my second wife, and things were great because obviously you can't drink over there. So I mean, she could see the real me. But once kind of I got back, and we were stationed in different places, so I was in Arkansas, she was in Florida. Um, and that was kind of like a bad thing for me because we didn't have any time together, and so I would just drink. It was kind of like I was making these bad situations for myself almost on purpose, so that I had an excuse to drink, and I didn't have anyone holding me accountable. And so, yeah, over time that marriage fell apart. I cheated, and then I told her, and then obviously, kind of from that, it's hard to rebuild any kind of trust, especially when you're not living together. It's hard to have that contact and that connection. And so that was another divorce. And that was something that we didn't get divorced right away, and it was kind of like we were trying to work through things. And then we both deployed again, and during that time, that was kind of like the end of it. I think it was kind of, we felt both like we were both just too far gone, kind of thing. And that was just led to more problems for me personally, because I was trying, there were times where I would stay sober for a long time. I'd gone probably a year at a point while I was, during the 11 years in the Air Force. But I always convinced myself, like, at this point, like when I had been sober for a year, I had made staff sergeant. I was really doing well. But then there's just something that came over me, was like, okay, I could have a drink now. Like I've been doing good for this long. I can handle it. I've matured, but it's a sickness. Like, you convince yourself, because deep down, I think you want to feel. It's almost like an alcoholic can convince himself that they like to be depressed, or they like to kind of destroy things and kind of mess their life up a little bit. And I got just so used to living that way that it was hard to step away. It was hard to feel positive and to do good things and see myself succeed. And yeah, so once I got to my third duty station, third and final one in California, was like, at this point, I was, like I said, I was a staff sergeant, and you don't really hang out with the same people. You don't hang out with the E4 squad anymore. And at that point, I just separated from everybody. I was embarrassed by how heavily I drank at this point, and I didn't make new friends. And I really just drank alone. At this point, it was me drinking alone, going to the bar that was close to my house. And that's when I got my second DUI. Was like, there was a point where I was living on the base, and because first I was living off base, and I would just go to the bar and I would be able to walk. But then there was a point where I moved back on base, and I decided I was gonna drive, and got caught. It'd probably been, man, I probably had driven drunk hundreds of times, like in my life, like a ridiculous amount of times. And I got caught, and that was definitely a lesson that I needed. And they hit me with, 9 months of driving school, lose your license, like $20,000 in fines, and having to go to, having to go to AA like 15 times a month. So I was like, I could drive, and AA wasn't on base, so I had to like take the bus, or I had to bike like 10 miles to get to AA. And so yeah, that didn't help. I had to rely on people for rides to get to like traffic school. And it kind of knocks you down. Like, you think this is like helping me rebuild, my responsibility and hoping I'm learning. But at the same time, I'm like beating myself up because I'm relying on my friend to take me to these courses for 9 months. And so I found myself in a bad relationship. I had lost rank after the DUI. Like, I was pulled over off base and I got hit by, the civilian law enforcement. And then they also got me in the Air Force, and I was back down to E4, ended up in a really bad relationship. And she was, she was really like manipulative and nasty. And there was just a night that she basically just walked out on me. Like, said that she was done basically, and that I was worthless, and I had agreed, and I decided I was going to drink everything in my house, and I drank like a whole bottle of Jägermeister and a few beers, and I was done. I was sick of letting people down, letting myself down, and that was the moment when I decided like I was going to take my life. And my roommate at the time was out of town. He was somewhere, and I knew he had a pistol in his dresser. And so I went and got it. And I was like, man, I can't do this how I'm feeling now. So I'm just going to keep drinking, and hopefully I'll have the courage to do this. And so I drank and drank and drank, and I wound up like talking on the phone to an old friend that was able to get me to call the suicide hotline. And so I have, the phone in one hand and I have the gun in the other hand, and I'm trying to they're trying to help, but they can't. Like, I'm lost, man. I'm drunk. I'm super depressed. I just don't want to live. And they were able to, I guess, trace my phone and figure out where I am, because the cops ended up arriving at my house. And then basically they took me, like the ambulance took me. I was, at this point, I'm so drunk, it's like probably close to alcohol poisoning. So I wake up in the hospital, and I'm kind of there, with my commander and my first sergeant and stuff. And I'm still having a good time. Like, I'm cracking jokes and I'm acting like there's no pain there. Like, I remember they had brought like a mental health counselor or something in that wanted to have me committed, and they wanted me to basically get put in an asylum of some sort. And they could see that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't thinking rationally. And so luckily the Air Force was able to not, they took responsibility of me, and they ended up sending me to rehab in San Antonio. But before that, they took me home and they showed me that there was a bullet hole in the ceiling, and that I in fact tried, and really woke me up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Woo. Wow.
Heavy stuff, man. Yeah. So they were like, look what you did. I didn't even remember doing it, but it was like, man, if someone's not looking out for me,
Yeah.
at that point, it was like, okay, God has been watching me this whole time. He needed me to get to this point. He needed me to see how real it was, that I could die. And that was kind of like the saving grace, and that was the last drink I had. And life got way better from there. But yeah, that was, it was
so how long has it
years.
How long has it been now since then? How long have you been sober?
That was February 9th, 2015. So over 6 years.
Oh, wow, man. So
Yeah.
another question that kind of all led into is, throughout these years of being an alcoholic and all the alcoholism and the addiction, were you ever battling with you talk about it in your album, The Enemy? Were you, throughout this time, were you battling with yourself, with God? Were you trying to stop? Like, were there ever instances where you were kind of realizing that, like, hey, I'm down the wrong path? Or was it just at that moment 9 years later where that was the time? Or was it kind of like, a lot of times where those things happened and occurred?
Yeah, I mean, there were tons of those moments, like where I've kind of felt like, man, I need to stop drinking, but ultimately I was just sick, man. I couldn't. I needed like the realness of death. Like that was the only
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
that was gonna save me. I've been pulled over drunk and got away with it. I had
yeah,
two DUIs. I had I don't know how
yeah,
many broken relationships. Two divorces and all these things. The bottle still won over people,
yeah,
over relationships, over my career.
yeah,
Um, and so I think death had to be so real and like so
yeah,
close, for me to
yeah.
realize that I needed to.
Now, what was going on with your family? Like your mom, your dad, like were they privy to any of this? Like did they see the sign? Like clearly you weren't with them, you were stationed away, you were no longer home, but were they
Right.
noticing the distance between you and them? Were they noticing like what was their thoughts on all this as it was going on? Or did you kind of
Um,
keep a good job of keeping it from them?
I they knew for sure, but I wasn't obviously very good at talking about it. I think I was so ashamed, of kind of what I had become that it was hard to have those conversations because we never talked about difficult things. It was kind of like um, very lighthearted, like joking kind of a scenario, with my family. And so, we never talked about sin. We never really talked about specifics of what was going on in one another's lives. And so it was hard for me to reach out, to my family just because I was embarrassed, like to me, they
Yeah.
seemed like great Christians, without any, any sin, knowing that that wasn't the case.
Yeah, yeah,
But I felt that way, it was like, I can't talk to them
yeah.
about this. They wouldn't understand, but
Yeah.
come to find like my father had drinking problems and stuff. I found this stuff out later, but it kind of made it tough. It kind of like almost
Yeah.
divided us, and it made it hard to talk to family. And so having music and having people that I served with was so important for me, to have those people that um, got me. Maybe they didn't quite understand like how the heavy drinking kind of the role it played in my life, and maybe they
Yeah.
couldn't quite understand the level that I was at as far as drinking went, but people really understood me, and having brothers that were willing to sit there and listen to me was super important. And so
Yeah.
I like I said, they sent me to the rehab, and that was really important. And then they kind of kept me going through like alcohol, like counseling with other people that were kind of dealing with those issues, kind of until I got out. And so that was super helpful to have. But yeah, it was some things you just can't talk to your family about,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely understand that.
maybe some people can, but I kind of felt like it was making almost creating more problems than
Yeah.
helping all of us kind of come together. So
Yeah. So I understand you got out the Air Force and then you kind of started on your journey of, becoming an artist and stuff like that. So how did that whole transition happen? And then what led you, I know this is years later, but what kind of led you into, writing the album Enemy? Like how did that all, because you have a whole bunch of stuff before Enemy, right?
oh yeah.
Like how long have you, so before Enemy, how long was that? Because I started going back into your music and I'm like, oh wow, this guy's been around. Like this guy's got
Yeah.
a lot of like, bro, I feel like every day I have your Spotify on shuffle. So I feel like every day I hear a new song that I haven't heard yet.
Yeah.
But
um I pretty much got started like really getting back into like making music probably that same year, like probably in November of that same year, after I'd like been to rehab and kind of like was figuring out who I was again, without alcohol, and kind of rediscovering my faith, and meeting meeting Erin, who is now my wife, and kind of really just piecing everything back together, was also like piecing my artistry back together, because I had always been rapping. Like we had done shows out in London, like we had done shows all over the place
Oh
while I was in
wow.
the military. Yeah, but it was hard to like really do it. Like we had a random show maybe once a year, and that was like fun to do. And we would make tracks. I'd have a few good buddies, still that we have albums and stuff that are out there, but never we actually I don't think you could release music as like an independent artist that easy, not as easy as you could today. So, um, but yeah, once I kind of was figuring out who I was, it was like, okay, now I got to share this stuff, because obviously, um, there's a lot of darkness and there's a lot of things that I know people can relate to, and so that was like me trying to like figure out um, what kind of stories I wanted to share with people, and really figure out what was helpful. And that obviously it's a long road, to like create the music and kind of go the direction of what people are enjoying, really. So that was kind of like me figuring it out. I think the first project I put out was called Finding Decuir, and it was just like a 5 song EP that I did. And there was like a song called Fangs where I was talking about being like a werewolf, and it was kind of like a fun song. And then I had like songs about drinking and stuff as well. And so that was like just trying to navigate, um, what do people want to hear? It's kind of one of those things that's, I think every artist is trying to like figure out. Obviously we know our story, we know what we can rap about, just about any day, but it's like what's going to help people. And I think that's, as people, I think we do like to help people. And so
Yeah.
having that kind of that idea in the back of my mind when I'm creating is definitely a part of the process. But yeah, to
Yeah.
get to Enemy was, man, I think I had to grow as an artist, but also grow in my faith and kind of build relationships with the right people. Obviously, TMR and Topher were a big part of that. I mean, we met about 4 years ago, and I think knowing that we were all vets and we had all kind of seen a different world and kind of been overseas, and really were, um, there's that camaraderie, and there's that brotherhood. I think that is almost automatic when you
Yeah.
meet
No.
when you
Yeah.
meet someone that's also military or a veteran. And so that was like big for us to understand each other and really build off each other and help each other grow. And that was, obviously a big part of my growth, was building with other people. And that just
Yeah.
goes to show, as a difference from me trying to figure out things on my own as an alcoholic, was like, man, this is nice to have two people that I'm just connected with out of nowhere to kind of grow with. And so, yeah, when we all started, I mean, TMR had a pretty good following already, but I mean, together we have like lifted each other up. And so that's been incredible. But for me to like, it's hard to say like the path that I went, but I kind of just went toward, I was like slowly going toward faith and the things that I truly believed in, because I had walked away slowly for many years, that it was like I'm slowly coming back, like I'm slowly adding bits about God, or the ways that I felt like I was saved. As I created more music, I was adding more of that in, because I didn't want to like scare any listener away either. You kind of want to like
Yeah.
be accepting of all kind of people. And so I wanted to kind of introduce that stuff slowly, and
Yeah.
hopefully people could relate to it. And so Enemy,
Bro,
I was,
well,
go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt you, but like that's the thing about it. Like, so I want to ask this question before I insinuate, but you don't identify as a Christian artist, right? Like, do you say like I am a Christian rapper?
No, I don't.
Okay,
But
so the
but
reason
I
why I
am,
say that,
but I it's funny because I am a Christian and I am a rapper.
yeah, but the reason why I say that is that like a lot of people, like so there's a couple of Christian rappers that I've listened to in the past, right? That I still listen to, right? So I listened to a guy called Bizzle. I listened to a dude named Dayton. I don't know if you heard of Seven. Lecrae, you know, he's a bigger name. But there's a lot of people that I listen to, and Bizzle's one of my favorites, and it's because I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but
I know Bizzle, yeah.
So a lot of his music, he'll go back on other famous artists and their music, and he'll make remixes to their songs and stuff.
Okay.
So a lot of times I've been like Macklemore made that one song. I don't remember the name of it, but Bizzle made not a diss track, but it was just a response to Macklemore's song. And you know that other guy, oh, what the heck is his name? He's like newer, but I don't know. The guy, it's about the devil's work.
Okay.
So there's a guy I can't remember his name, it's escaping me. But so the song is called Devil's Work, and Bizzle does a response to the song. And where I'm getting at is that multiple times I've said to friends of mine that don't listen to Christian rap, like, hey, yo, you got to listen to this dude. And they're like, oh, what is he, a Christian rapper? And then immediately no matter how lyrically good he is, they don't even listen, because they're like, bro, I'm not trying to listen to this. So what I love about your music is that I don't even say that. I'm just like, hey, listen, man, listen to this album. It's a phenomenal album. He's talking about the enemy in your head. That's all I say. That's all I say. And then I have people who are like, oh, wow. Because the thing is with you, and I like the fact that you don't identify as that, not that because you're not that, but because I feel like when people listen to your music, and it's like you said, and I think exactly what you wanted to do, you're doing. You're not coming off too preachy, because that's the problem. When people come off like, you got to be saved, no one wants to listen at all. No one wants to listen. They're like, bro, I'm not trying to go listen to a sermon. I want to enjoy an album. I want to enjoy music. With your music, that's exactly what it is. It's like it's in there, but it's not. You don't feel attacked while you're enjoying the music,
right?
And that's a lot of, you know what I mean? Because like my wife talks about it, bro. Like my wife, you know, my wife's born and raised in a Jewish family. The first time my wife, and she still to this day says it, she's like, bro, I remember going to that church with you, and I remember Pastor Joe just staring at me from the pulpit. And I was like, he wasn't just staring at you, he was staring at everybody. But as someone who's not saved, that's how you feel. You feel like that pastor or that preacher's staring at you. And it's the same thing. But with your music, at least I can say that I don't feel that way, because of the way that you've been able to mix both realities into one lyrically is just amazing. Because even if you're not a Christian, you can still relate to having an enemy. You know what I mean? And maybe you don't, as a person, say, hey, my enemy is the devil. Maybe you don't believe in the devil. But the reality of it is that your album isn't pushing anything. It's just welcoming everybody, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes along with, I think the way that I kind of felt, you know, like, what do I need to be saved from? Like,
yeah,
I think my experiences with like Christian hip hop and being a Christian young kind of like helped me to realize that you got to ease into that stuff. Like people don't want to hear you preaching at them, and people want to feel, you know, the connection to a certain time or moment or addiction or whatever it may be, because we're all people. Like I'm not going to ever act like I'm better than someone for not being Christian. Like God wants us to take care of everybody. God loves all of us. And so that was a big part, is me like trying to connect with people and not just connect with Christians, you know, that, you know, I knew from personally that I was like, when I would hear Christian rap back in the day, I was like, well, this isn't good. Like it feels forced. I understand what they're trying to do, but at the same time, it wasn't enjoyable to anybody. Like, it wasn't enjoyable to everybody.
Well, I remember when I was at a youth group. I was an adult just helping out with youth group, and my boy was like, yo, you got to listen to this Christian. I was like, and I was that person. I was like, bro, I'm not listening to Christian rap. Like, why would I do that? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, why? In my head, I was like, why would I listen to Christian rap? Like, why? I listen to rap because I want to hear the cursing, because I want to hear this, I want to hear that. I don't want to, you know what I mean? So and I remember he showed me Andy Mineo, he showed me Lecrae. And again, I don't know where I came across Bizzle, but he was one of my favorites. And then, you know, another guy I listened to, and it's funny because this guy, his name's Seven, and he has I don't want to call it a gang, but he has a group called Hog Mob, and it's Hooked on God. And the craziest thing is that one of the first albums I ever listened to, I had never seen this man's face. I'd never seen his face. I don't know anything what he looks like. And this guy, I listened to an album, and it's a gospel album where he raps a little bit in it. He kind of like you, where you sing and you rap, and then mix of this album.
Okay.
And I don't remember the name of it. But I ended up falling in love with this album. Like literally, like I was a mailman for a while, and I would listen to it on my routes. I would listen to it 2-3 times a day. And it was like a gospel / rap album. And then all of a sudden I looked down at my phone and I Googled him, and he's this dude who has face tattoos all over his face. He has literally sleeves, like he's tatted everywhere on his body. Yeah. And it was like, bro, I would never in my life think that this dude wrote a gospel album. Yeah. And that was when I started realizing that, like, how judgmental of a person I was. And I remember I showed the album to my pastor at the time, and I was like, hey, do me a favor and listen to this album and then go and look what the dude looked like. And my pastor was like, okay. And and literally the same thing. And he looked the guy up afterwards, and he was like, bro, I never would have thought that. He's like, I never, you know, and it was crazy because like, so what was in your, like, how did Enemy come about? Like, why, like, that you, like, was there a reason for the way that the track list is in line? And then, you know, like, what, because there's a lot of deep songs in that album. Like, again, Sorry Mom is probably one of my favorite songs. And then he is with me, bro. Like that's a great song. I love the way the first song, I love Preview. Like, I love the way that it starts. So like, was there a specific reason, like, as far as the track list, and then, you know, what kind of puts you in the mode to get those lyrics out?
So I really like to start off kind of light and then work toward the darkness and then kind of find a way back. Preview obviously was pretty light. I'm just rapping about like topical things, masks and all the kind of nonsense of a preview of what's kind of going on in the world at the time, so that, you know, a listener can kind of hear that and kind of remember what's going on at that time. And so, Preview, then Shadow of Death, you know, that's kind of, it's a little heavy, but it also, you know, it has like a faith based undertone to it. I feel like, you know, me and Topher are talking about more positive things instead of going right into dark things. And then, you know, we come to HQ, which is me and Angel kind of getting a little darker, but also not, you know, it's got a good,
I like him.
Bouncy beat. Him. Thank you. Yeah, Angel's a great guy. And I met him through the Barkeepers, actually, and he's been a solid guy. So great to work with, and he has that strong, like, deep, raspy voice that worked well, I think, with that topic. And then we kind of lightened it up even more. We brought TMR along for No MC, and really just had fun, like, doing a hip hop kind of thing. And then I think from there it was like, okay, let's get into it. Like the first few tracks are like the kind of the hit tracks.
Bro, and that's how it is, because I remember the first time, like, listening, talking to you now about it. I remember the first time listening to it, I was like in it, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, now we just got really serious. Like, I was like, oh wait, hold on.
So I try not to jump in too fast, but to kind of like slowly build up to when it's about to get darkness too on them. And so watching you, which was like kind of starting to talk about those things, like the things that are the enemy and the ways that it's watching you, like the sickness, an addiction? Like, what are these things that are kind of
Bro,
keeping their
that
eyes?
that's one of my favorite songs. Watching You, like that song, literally, I was like, bro, like, and
Thank
that's
you.
what I'm saying. When it comes to the point of where like you don't have to be a Christian to listen to this album, like whether you are or you're not, like these are all things everybody deals with. Like you feel like you're being watched by somebody or something. You feel like every movement you make or everything you do, or you want to do better, but then all of a sudden you're backpedaling, and
Yep.
like that's exactly what that whole, like, yeah, that it's, yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of like the real, I think, turning point was Watching You. And then from Watching You was the actual song Enemy, where I kind of talked about like getting and finding like little like dirty magazines and stuff as a kid, kind of like ways that the enemy uh, kind of finds you, like you were saying, he kind of finds you early on, and then it kind of
Yeah,
invests itself, and then it could grow into a bigger problem. Maybe it won't, but certain things,
yeah,
likely will grow into a problem. And then He Is With Me, because those two tracks were so like heavy. I was like, we got to come back a little and
bring you
let
back
people
up.
let people know that God is with you and that you're not alone. And
Yeah,
then I got dove deeper, Darkness 2, which was like the toughest. Other than Home, that was the toughest song that I had to write on the whole album, because I talk about I open up and I'm honest. I talk about
yeah,
cheating. I talk about really just failing as a person, and really just feeling lost and getting caught in that darkness and living there for a long time. Um, and then I had to brighten it back up again with Shiny, and
yeah,
I'm just
yeah, yeah,
it's it still has a message of like greed, and you want these shiny things, things that kind of catch your eye, um, just to kind of remind you that there are other ways that the enemy will try to get you, like with getting lost in your finances and things that can also be negative and kind of getting a hold of you in a bad way. And
yeah.
then I go to Sorry Mom, and that's just me saying I'm sorry for, man, all this stuff, right? I mean, we talked about it a little bit, with how I felt like I couldn't really talk to my parents.
Yeah,
It's kind of like saying, I'm sorry that I became this person. Um, I'm sure that there were moments where, um, had she known what I was really going through, she probably would have wished that we talked more, or would have wished that, who knows? I mean, it's hard to know what a mom feels, but I was
yeah,
just saying sorry for kind of like losing that connection. There was a moment after I had tried to take my life, that we sat down and had a really good conversation, and opened up about a lot of things going on in her life and going on, that went on in my father's life, and kind of made me feel more like not quite an outcast of the family or the black sheep, but deep down I always kind of felt that way, and that was just kind of like me opening up, and saying, I wish I was there, kind of more, and kind of wish
yeah.
that we had that connection, like other families have. And then Poke the Bear, that was a song actually that I had written before all these songs,
Oh, really?
but
I,
yeah, but I felt like it went along with, um, so in the hip hop community, you touched on it earlier, that it's not really welcoming of Christians, and not really
yeah,
influenced much by that side of humanity, I guess you could say.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so, um, Poke the Bear is just me talking about basically like people that had poked me or done something to me at a time that, um, really just felt uncharacteristic of like what hip hop is truly about, like the diversity and the unity of the art form. And people had started to poke me, and people had started to like pull away from me that I'd known for many years. And so that was me just like, okay, you guys want to poke the bear? Well, I'm going to let you guys know now that I'm not going to sit or, back down from my beliefs and my message. And so poke the bear was just me kind of letting loose a little bit, and just trying to stand strong, because I know it's hard for artists like myself in this culture and in this genre to be who we are, because it's not influenced by God, it's influenced by the enemy necessarily, right?
Yeah. It really is, man. And that's the thing though. Like what I did a little live this morning about it, because it's aggravating to me. Like I was talking to the Marine rapper about it, because it just annoys me. It annoys me. I'm looking at the charts, and you have all these people, like you got Little Nas with 6 of the same song. Like this dude is taking up parts of the top charts, and it's the same exact song. And what annoys the heck out of me is that people will be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna go buy music," but clearly you're buying his stuff to get it up there, or you're downloading it or whatever. And that's why it's like it's so annoying to me, because so many people talk about they want to be better or they want to act better, and it's like, bro, but you start your day, and I'm not. Again, I'm at fault for this too, because I've been there. But like we start our days with so much divisiveness, and like it sucks that it has to be so hard to get good music up top. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't listen to most Post Malone. I'm not gonna say, I hate that I even say I listen to Post Malone, because I hated Post Malone for
Guilty
the
pleasure.
longest time. Bro, I hated listening to him.
Don't feel bad. He's one of those guilty pleasure artists for me too. I enjoy his stuff. So you're not alone.
I hated listening to him. And and I swear, like I literally hated it. And my boy I was on recruiting duty with would play his music all the time. And I'd be like, bro, will you just stop? And one day I was on my way to MEPS to go drop off this kid at MEPS, and I heard a cover. It was a cover of his song, but I didn't know it was his song. And I ended up like going. It was a rock cover of Rockstar, and I was like, yo, this is an awesome song. I was like, this is an awesome song. And then I told my boy, I was like, yo, Mo, I was like, yo, listen to this song. And he's like, that's Post Malone, right? I'm like, wait, what? And he was like,
hold up.
I'm like, nah. So then I ended up listening to his whole album. But no, like, and that's my thing, is that like, it's so hard to get good music up to the top, because nobody, like, people want to hear good music, but they don't want to share. And I shouldn't say good music, but positive music that doesn't have cursing. Like, and that's what I love, is that you guys are able to do this without having to say one curse word. Like the idea that you're able to do what you did shows that, okay, we don't have to be this divisive, because it is a beautiful art form. And the problem is that so many people don't listen to it because of that, because of the divisiveness and stuff like that. So it's a lost. So there's a lot of people that are lost to it because they don't even want to hear about it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I love, like, for instance, my dad, bro, my dad will not listen to rap. But when Let's Go Brandon came out, I was like, listen, Dad, I don't care if you listen to it. I'll put it on mute. I was like, just read the lyrics. And because the video came out, I was like, just read the lyrics. And my dad listened to it, and he read the lyrics, and he was like, oh, wow. He was like, I would have never listened to that. And I was like, exactly. And that's the thing, is a lot of people have that negative connotation towards it. And that's the thing, man, is, I just love what you guys are doing. And like with the song today, with Dear Kyle or Not Guilty, like the fact that you guys can do like Topher's albums, the fact that you guys can do those things, and you don't have to utter a word of disrespect, or you don't have to be disrespectful in any which way, and then you can literally be that positive and still make music like that people are going to enjoy. It's just that we need people that are going to share the music. But that's the thing, is that people don't want to say, hey man, listen, I shared God today, or like, you know what I mean? Like they come off with that, like, bro, people are gonna judge me, and that's like what you were talking about before. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, if I get something from an album, I'm gonna share it. And even if it's something that you may never like, I'm going to share it, because it's just something that I think might change your life. And that's exactly what you're doing with your albums and with your music, man. And I'm just ecstatic for it, because like every time you guys drop another song, I'm just excited because of just because so far there hasn't been one song that I haven't related to. Like I went back to what is it, Box Fort? With the bro, I freaking love that album, bro. Like, dude, I love the old school type of, like, I love everything about that album. I love the album art, like the cover art, like y'all just sitting in there in the fort, like bro. That
Thank
dude,
you.
I
Yeah,
love it, bro.
that was a really fun project that we kind of just randomly put together and turned out really well. Like Under Attack was probably one of our highest streamed songs for like a long time. So
Yeah,
I knew that was definitely a special one that we did for sure.
yeah. So
Yeah.
my next question is, I guess, kind of just moving it towards like Cuz It Bangs. How did that, bro? You have 18, including you, it's 18, or is it 18?
Yeah, including
Yeah.
me.
So
Yeah.
eight, bro. I understand what you told me before, like through barkeepers and stuff like that. And like these are people that you've known for years. Like, dude, I just think it's insane that you made an album that like it all goes together. It all like comes together as one album while having 18 different personalities from different cultures, from different walks of life, from different, like it's just insane. How long did it take to put it all together?
Honestly, only 2 to 3 months.
That's it,
From
really?
start to finish. Yeah. So I
Wow.
typically the way those work is I'll select. I kind of just take a little bit of time to collect 10 beats, and then I'll share them all. Like I'll obviously find the artists. You know, most of them are repeat artists that have been on previous ones, but this time we added probably a lot. We added like probably eight or so. Probably about half the artists on there are new artists. And
Yeah.
so I would get everyone in a group, drop all 10 beats, and I'll say, let me know which beats you guys like. And then I will, once they select, you know, some would just say, I only like this one. Or some people might say, I like all 10. And so I kind of organize everyone according to like who I think would work well together, um, who would sound good on whatever beat. And so I kind of like come up with a list and put everyone on each beat, and then from there, um, I'll start writing choruses. Like, what's this song going to be about? And so I'll really take that first month is basically beats and doing the choruses, and so it's kind of just a long process. Like I'll sit there and listen to the beat over and over, and then I'll kind of like, okay, what could this potentially be about? And then I'll start like figuring out like, am I going to sing this chorus or am I going to rap it? And then I'll put everything together. And once I, you know, have courses that I'm happy with, I'll send them back out. Like I'll basically send out like a rough draft that has the beat with my chorus on it, and then they can write their verse and kind of place it where it needs to be placed and send that back to me. And so that last month is like, okay, guys, you have this whole month to write, you know, your best verse that you have for this song, and then they send them back to me, and then I send them to get mixed. And so that's kind of what has worked. You know, I'll go from get the artists, get the beats, do the chorus, send them out, have them send them back to me, and then I get everything mixed by 2Pro, the legend, the legend of making our music sound good, 2Pro Beats. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically it. So I mean, most of the pressure is really just on me to get a good chorus, I think, and a good topic. Um, but I mean, these artists have a high level of versatility, and you know, I've been kind of watching them grow as artists, and I've, you know, seen what they can do. So it's almost easy to pick, you know, dope artists just because I've been watching them for years. And so
Yeah.
yeah, and
Dude,
then
it's just so sick to, because that's what I was wondering the whole time, is like, how does the beat come first? Does the lyrics come second? Like, how does all that happen? And then how do they get their music in there? And then, bro, it's
yeah,
just because the whole, like I said, the whole album, like it flows together. Like, and like, I think my favorite song is Immune. If I'm honest, I think the
Okay.
just the opening, I think that opening track just alone, like, bro, I was excited, bro. And I was tight because I literally was like, because there's been times in my life, like for instance, and you mentioned it, and you mentioned them, Chris Farley and Venom, and Tom Hardy, right? And I love Tom Hardy, and Venom 2, I was so excited for, but I hated it. I
Got you.
hated it. I hated it. I loved Venom 1. There's never been a Tom Hardy movie I haven't liked until Venom 2. So what I'm getting at is that, like, when you said, all right, I'm gonna release this track, I'm gonna release this album tonight. I literally, bro, I had to be up in 3 hours. And I was like, you know what, bro? I'm just gonna
Man.
stay up till 12. I was like, I'm just gonna stay up till 12. I feel like this is gonna be a bomb ass album. And then I'm gonna play it, and then I'll go to bed. And then I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna play it on my way to drill. And literally that's exactly what I did. And then I probably listened, and I listened to it all the way into Brooklyn. And then I listened, to it while I was in Brooklyn, and I listened to it while I was at drill. And then even right now, I still have it. If it's not that, it's Enemy, and then all the new songs that are coming out. Like, I'm telling you, like, bro, my wife the other day, she was like, bro, stop fangirling. My wife was like, bro, you're like my wife was like, bro, you're a huge fangirl right now. And I was like, listen, like for me, it's like I told you, like, I literally stopped listening to music for probably like the past year of my life, because
Yeah.
I was in the, like, when I got out of the Marine Corps off of active duty, I started realizing how much divisiveness was surrounded by me. Like, I was surrounded by alcoholism. I didn't want to say that I was an alcoholic, but I was dealing with alcohol every day. It was
Yeah.
my only way to cope. So that was that. When I was listening to music on my way to MEPS or wherever I was listening to it, it wasn't good music. It was divisive music. So then I came to a point where, like, now being a father, I'm so conscious of what my son listens to or what my
Yeah.
son watches. Because, like, you're talking, and and watching you, you were, you opened up this nudie magazine at, age 5 or whatever it is. Like, I was introduced to pornography at age 5. I remember that specifically. My
Yep.
older brother opened up a porno mag, and at age 5, that was that. So for me, now being a father, I don't want to shelter my son, but I want to keep his mind as clear as it can be for as long as it can be. So now that's why I really don't listen to rap anymore, because it was so divisive. And then all of a sudden, I come across the Marine Rapper, I come across Topher, I come across you, and now I'm like, bro, I can finally listen to music and not have to worry about my son saying something in the background. Like my son just before, my son said, he said something really loud, and I was like, Lucas, I thought he said punk ass, right? And my wife thought he said punk ass. So me and my wife are like, because I don't say that. Me and my wife don't say that. I'm
Yeah.
like, where did he get that from? And he's like, Dad, who's on your podcast? I'm like,
Podcast.
yeah. So I was like, because that's the thing is, like, bro, I've been the one to curse or to say something, and then my
Yeah.
son goes off and says that, or like my son, he'll grab a drink and he'll be like, oh, look, Daddy, I'm having a beer. And then I'm like, I don't want, like, to other people that, on TikTok, Instagram, all these things, that's funny. But it's like, no, that's not funny. Like, a kid
Right.
that young shouldn't be doing that. So that's why for a long time I got out of the music and I was just done with it. Even watching TV and Netflix and stuff, I was like, bro, I can't watch that stuff. Because I just realized how much of a nasty person it was making me in my relationships and the words that I
Yeah.
was saying to people. And then now I came across you guys, and now it's like, okay, well, now I have something to listen to in the gym. If it's not Dr. Billy Alsbrook's, motivational speeches, or
Mm.
Dr. Thomas motivational speeches, like, if it's not them, because that was a long time too. I was like, for 6 months, I was just listening to that because I couldn't find positive music. But now
Yeah.
I've found you guys and what you guys are releasing and what you guys are doing. And I'm just thankful for it, man. I'm thankful for, everything that you're doing. So I guess my next question, kind of just wrapping the whole thing up, would be what, what is number one? Well, before I get to that, number one, right now, as the person that you've become, how do you deal daily with the addictions of your past, with the issues of your past? Because I'm sure that these are still things that keep trying to come in. The enemy hasn't gone. The enemy's no longer is still going to be here in your life. So how do you, daily battle with the enemy to make sure he doesn't gain a foothold? Like, what is it that you're doing to combat him? I guess would be the best way to ask that question.
Okay. First off, let me just say that I'm honored by the way that you've really gotten a hold of our music and helped us to share it, and that the messages really resonate with you. I'm grateful for all the, you've become like the biggest supporter of all of our music in a very short time, and I'm super grateful for you and for that. And so let me just say that. And to your question, I think the best thing for me to do is to just stay strong in my faith, and also to keep making the music that that helps other people, because that reminds me of like that life that I didn't want to keep living, but I kept living anyway. Reminding myself, how bad I got, and not letting myself get too far away from, those memories and those terrible things, that I did and that I was. So I think just reminding myself, that it's very real that I could slip up and fall back into that. And I know that I couldn't just have that one drink, like you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. I couldn't convince myself, that, oh, it's going to be okay this time, because I've had many, this time it's going to be okay. So yeah. And so I like to keep, it's like almost like what they say, keep your enemies close. Keep your enemies closer. That is my enemy, and I got to keep that close so I can remember how bad it is, and how quickly my life can turn bad and really bad. And so I like to, keep my faith, and keep that relationship with God, and look at my blessings as well every day. Like, I have a wonderful, supportive wife. When every relationship before was, people didn't want to support me. Like, I would be dating someone and they were like, why you want to rap? Like, or you're not good at rap, and stuff. So she's the first person that truly has supported me being a rapper. And so I look at all the blessings that I have. And so, like, why would I mess that up?
The other day you had posted that she also, and maybe I saw it wrong, is she's also sober as well now?
She is, yeah. So she, okay, I would say that she didn't have as big a problem as I did. She, did her binge drinking and stuff, and to help both of us to grow, together, she stopped drinking because she, when we met, she learned that I was sober. And so she just stopped drinking just to be supportive. Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. Huge, that's so awesome. That's so awesome, because a lot of people wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? True. Like, there's so many people in this life where, like, oh, I love you, but, and, other people, and it's even like, when you talk about alcoholism, I've had people like, where, and people who are recovering alcoholics, or people who are, that no longer do that or never did that, it becomes like a negative connotation. It's like, oh, why aren't you drinking? Or it's like, bro, why is it your business? Like, why? Like, if I ask you for Pepsi, do I say, why don't you like Coke? Like, it's not your business, bro. Just like, let me be. I mean, because I have friends like that, you know what I mean? Like, I have friends, and I was this person the other day. Now that I'm saying about this person, I'm just realizing now that I was that guy the other day.
We've all been that guy. Yeah.
So last week I had Friendsgiving, and my boy came over. He hit me up on his way, and he was like, "Hey, what do you want? What kind of alcohol do you want?" And I was like, "Oh, whatever you're drinking." He was like, "I'm not drinking." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Well, you can pick me up a 12-pack of, the new Blue Moon IPA." And he was like, "All right, word." So he brought it over, and at first I crack one open. I'm sitting there having a beer, and I didn't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden, I was like, "Yo, why aren't you drinking?" And he was like, "Cause, bro, I realized that I've been drinking way too much." And he was like, it was causing me depression. It was causing me problems. He was like, "Bro, I was waking up, and within an hour or 2 hours, I was drinking, and I realized that I needed to stop." And at that moment, it was more so like the actual question of like, hey man, why aren't you drinking? I guess because we are truly friends, and it wasn't more so like that random person who like, bro, I don't owe you an explanation of who the hell are you. You know what I mean? But so kind of ending it all, what advice would you give for anybody? Not, I wouldn't say in the military, because reality of it is that anybody can deal with all of the things that we've touched on. But my question for you would be, what kind of advice do you have just for anybody that's, battling daily with the enemy, that is kind of lost where they're at, sees these different signs but doesn't want to admit it? Like what kind of advice would you give them?
The best thing that probably helped me is just finding, like, kind of depend on what you're dealing with, but like for me it was alcohol, and I had to find a new thing to fill that space, because most of my free time went to alcohol. And so I had to find something to fill, what are you going to do instead? Because you're going to need something else to do with all your free time. Trying new things, writing, finding a new hobby, working out more, getting in touch with your beliefs, whatever they may be. Like, I think that's one thing about quitting drinking is people forget that, like, I have all this time, and if you're going to be sitting there like, oh man, I probably shouldn't drink, like, or you're trying not to drink, you need something to fill that space with. So that's probably the biggest thing that helped me, was like finding a new way to exist, and commit to something positive as much as you committed to something negative that was kind of destroying you. So yeah, that's probably the best advice, that I have, is filling that time. I mean,
Bro, I love how you said that. Sorry to interrupt you.
You're good.
I love the way that you said that, because filling your time with the positive as much as you were with the negative. Because the reality of it is like, number one, I've never thought about it like that. I like that you said that, because and that's again what I'm saying with the music. So many people, I don't know how, bro. I cannot tell you how many people I sent the iTunes link to, and then they were like, bro, I don't buy music. And I was like, okay, but do you? And I got into an argument with one of my buddies. I was like, but do you support veterans? He's like, of course I do. I was like, okay, so why can't you put $1.29 aside for this one dude? Oh, well, I support veterans in different ways. I was like, okay, but if this is the way where this man makes his money for his family and he's helping the world, right? Look at a better way to it. Because that's what I'm looking at, right? My mentality is this. It's not like you guys are, because if 50 Cent releases an album, nobody says, oh, why do I got to pay 50 Cent for music? No one would ever say that. But when a veteran comes out of nowhere and he's like, hey, man, I bought this album, can you go buy it? Everyone's like, yeah, I ain't got money right now. Or it's like, all these different things. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I know everyone's, financial status right now. But the reality of it is that if you truly want to help veterans as a community, these are the things that you got to do. Because, like, people look at the Air Force, not so much the Air Force, but people look at the Marine Corps, the Army, and all these branches, and they have a negative connotation towards them. All these veterans come out and they're effed up, or they're alcoholics, or they have depression, all this stuff. But now we can look at the Air Force and say, actually, you know what? D.Cure is a veteran of the Air Force, and look what the Air Force, did for him, or look at what his time in service did for him. And now it's showing a more positive outlook on it instead of that negative outlook. The Marine rapper, same thing. You hear so many negative things about the Marine Corps, but then you have this dude who literally, because of the Marine Corps, is where he is. And he literally talks about that all the time, about if it wasn't for the Marine Corps this, if it wasn't for the Marine Corps that. And it's like, but yet you want to sit here and say you support veterans, but yet I come at you asking you to buy a song for $1.29, and you're like, nah, bro. Or I'm like, hey, share this status. And it's like, nah, bro. And it's like, bro, like, why do you have 80,000 followers if all you're going to do is share a picture of you with no shirt on? like what do you
make a great point.
But then and it annoys me, because like, and then we talk about 22 a day, or somebody recently asked me, they sent me I'm going to be on a podcast as a guest, and the guy sent me a list of questions, and one of the questions was, how do we stop veteran suicide? And first of all, my thing was, okay, well, it's never going to stop. But the question is, in veteran suicide, it's how do we stop suicide? Because suicide in and of itself is a problem. But the reality of it is that the only way that we can, again, it'll never get stopped, but the only way that we can help it is by being there every day, not only on certain days of the week. You know what I mean? If there's something that comes across and you can share it, you know, or like for you, like you literally we're talking about how you had a gun at your head, you're about to kill yourself, and your boy called you, you're on the phone with your boy, and your boy was helping you out. And then you called the crisis hotline. Like that right there, if that dude didn't answer the phone, there could have been, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it is that everybody will say, oh, hey man, I'll be there for you. But then you call them, they don't answer the phone. Or you don't call them and they never hit you up. And that's why for me, if there's anything that I can do, even with my little status of 400 followers, I'm going to do it. I'm going to annoy the shit out of people. I'm going to message you on Facebook. I'm going to message you on whatever the hell platform I can get a hold of you. And like, bro, I punked one of my masters because he was like, bro, I'm not buying that song. So I was like, you know what, whatever. So I Apple paid him $2. And I was like, can you buy it now? And he was like, and he got pissed off at me. And I was just like, bro, because everybody says they want to help other people, but they don't do it. And you know, the reality of, but as soon as they need help, you're the asshole who didn't help them. But where were you at when that guy needed help? And that's the thing, bro. It's like, I'm not made out of money. Like my wife was like, Doug, what if 100 people ask you to buy the album? I guess, well, I guess I'm gonna be out $1,000. I don't know. Like, but you know, because you know, I just think, you know, when you look at the Bible, when you look at Christianity and just life in general, we're all here for a reason, whether you are a Christian or not. There's a reason why you're here. And we all need to be gracious, and we all need to show gratitude, and we all need to just show each other how to help each other. And by doing that, that's how we stop 22 a day from happening. I mean, because again, it's not just a number, but the reality of it is that so many people say they're advocates for change, but don't do anything to change. And that's why, again, and that's again why I love what you guys are doing, because like the Marine rapper, bro, I you know, listening to his story and listening to all his live feeds and listening to how he made a promise to God that if, you know, he made it out of Afghanistan, that he was going to, you know, release music all the time. Like those are things that I love, because it's like, bro, that's why, like every day that I hear a new album or a new song by you guys, I'm like, bro, how do these guys keep putting it out this quick? Like it's insane. Like it is insane, bro. It's like I just stopped listening to that one. Like, come on, like,
but if we have it, we're gonna put it out. I think it's important too to, like you were saying, I mean, to be intentional, you know, with what you're doing. You can say all kinds of stuff, but you have to put forth some action, you know, to reach out and to be there for somebody. I mean, people hit me up all the time. And I'm like, okay, I got time. Like, I'm just a person. Like people like, oh, you famous. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just a guy that has a following that, you know, just wants to help as much as the next guy.
And that's the thing, man. And I want to thank you for that, bro, because like and that was another thing I said this morning on the live, and I said to other people too. They were like, yo, why are you, like, one of my boys, Ergules, he is probably one of the first people who listen to my podcast, and he'll constantly hit me up and be like, bro, awesome episode, dude, this was an awesome episode. He'll hit me up like, hey man, I think you should fix this a little bit. I think as a listener, he's like, hey, I think you should do this and the third. And you know, there came a time a little bit like about a month ago where I was kind of like about to just drop the whole podcast. Got really annoyed, got upset about different stuff, and I was like, you know what, I'm kind of just gonna be done with it. And he was just like, bro, relax. He was like, you're doing good. He's like, you're changing my life. I want to hear your shit. He was like, just keep going. And then when I started hitting up about Let's Go Brandon, and I started talking about the music, he asked me the same thing. He was like, bro, why are you freaking like all of a sudden fangirling? And I was like, bro, because I reached out to this dude, not only you, but also the Marine rapper.
Yeah.
And they answered me back. I was like, you have no idea how many rappers on both spectrums in both genres that I've reached out to and have never hit me back. And I've just been like, bro, I'll hit people up, dude. People with millions of followers. I don't care if you'll ever open it. I'll literally send you a DM and be like, bro, your album just destroyed my whole life. I love you. You say you like, bro. I hit people like Seven, Bizzle, Dayton, like all these people. Like I hit them up, like no big deal, bro. I love your but the worst part is I see that it says scene, and I'm like, bro. So you saw that I complimented the shit out of your album, and you're not gonna hit me back?
Couldn't even just say one word.
Yeah,
just thanks.
Yeah, like I, like, even a TY, bro, like or word, like anything, bro. The word would have been good, and that's why when y'all hit me back and y'all were like, hey, thanks, man. You know that right there showed me the reality of your that you are who you say you are. Your music is what you say it is, and that everything you're talking about is the stuff that you've dealt with in your lifetime. And the fact that I can get with it and I can feel it and I can listen to it and I can communicate it with it's just that's why I want to, as much as maybe I'm annoying to people, I don't give a damn, but I just want to continue to share your guys' stuff because it's just like I think honestly, man, what you guys are doing is stuff that like I feel like one day I'm gonna be walking through, some kind of, outlet or some kind of mall, and I'm gonna hear your music in the store. And I'm gonna be like, "Yo, I remember when that song came out." Because like everything you guys are doing, bro, like on the real, like everything you guys are doing, man, like it's just, in my personal opinion, now talking to you guys, listening to your story, I think it's God sent. I think God put the three of you guys together for a reason. And you can feel it, like you were talking about earlier. Like you can, like I feel like y'all have known each other your whole lifetime, bro. Like when you listen to your guys' songs, the way that you guys just come together, even though the three of you rap so differently, it's just still so organic. So it's like it's so crazy how the three of you guys complement each other, and how Space Force is just this one thing. It's like all these molecules came together and make one molecule or some crazy scientific stuff. I don't know, but it's dope, man.
It's a blessing, and I think we all know that. We all can see how special it is, and people tell us, and people get excited every time that it's Space Force. So yeah, it's just a blessing. So we're gonna keep after it for sure.
So ending this, what's next for us? Is there anything for us to expect now that Cuz It Bangz 6 has been released? Is there anything coming? Anything else that I'm about to go crazy about?
You already know. So Space Force will be doing a little Christmas project that'll have probably 3 or 4 songs on there that will drop this year, hopefully within the next week or two. And then and then getting into Enemy 2.
Oh,
so I've got a couple, I think about 4 songs so far that I'm two are done and 2 I'm working on. And so early February, maybe that one will probably be done. So we're gonna keep it coming as fast as we can,
bro. I'm excited already. Like,
thank you.
I'm excited. I'm excited, bro. Like, I'm telling you, bro. Enemy is probably one of the first albums that I've listened to on repeat in years. Like, I don't.
Thank you.
And it's crazy because there's so many albums that growing up I listened to. Like, I used to be a huge Blink-182 fan. Okay. And then now being older, I go back and I listen to it in the car on my way to Vermont, or like when I'm traveling, and I'm like, bro, did I ever listen to these lyrics? Like was I ever listening to what this music is about? Because a lot of it is just like, wow.
It's crazy you said Blink-182 because I literally mentioned them in a song, like a new song that's gonna be on the Christmas project.
Okay.
Which is crazy you said that.
Okay, all right. But yeah, man, and that's crazy. It's just crazy, to think about it, But again, man, I thank you guys. Like I thank you on behalf of anybody who's listening to music, because I can personally say that there were some dark times in my life recently. Not like dark, but there was just some stuff that I was dealing with and battling with, and listening to your album definitely made me realize that I wasn't alone in it. And it made me realize that, like, a lot of times we feel that way. We feel like, like you were talking about how you couldn't talk to your family and you felt like you were segregated or you felt like you were a black sheep.
Yeah.
Everybody feels that way. And listening to that album, Enemy, was that realization to me that I'm not the only person that is being attacked by the enemy daily. And it just made me really, really just realize it, bro. Like, and I can't thank you enough for that, man. But that's all I got, bro. I appreciate your time, bro. I'm so thankful that you were able to give me your time to do this episode, and I can't wait for the rest of your music to continue to come out. I can't, I pray that you just stay healthy and that your mind doesn't go anywhere crazy, like in a bad way. I hope it continues to bring us forth some good stuff, man. Just thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you're doing, bro. I love the art form. I love everything that you're. I just want to thank you again for bringing me back to music, because I literally just stopped. So if it wasn't for you guys, I probably wouldn't be listening to it as much as I am again. So just thank you so much for that, bro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm honored. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I hope it continues to grow and grab people. And I know you're talking to people that have a lot to share, and I love what you're doing. So thank you always for doing what you do, and thank you for supporting us. I'm grateful to have you as a friend and a brother, man. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, brother. All right, have a good night.
You too, man.
Later, dog.
Peace out.
Oh, you too.